license and registration now. Why are you driving a car like this?
My wallet's in my back pocket and the registration's in the glove box. Tell me the reason for the stop.
Reason is I smell weed. Step out. Don't argue. Don't lecture me.
That's false. And before you put hands on me, check my badge. I'm Chief Deputy Marcus Thorne.
Thank you.
The high-definition dashcam mounted on the dashboard of the state trooper's cruiser caught the entire sequence in vivid color, every frame stamped with the date and time. It recorded the clear blue sky, the dry asphalt of Interstate 95, and the cherry-red 1969 Chevelle SS cruising in the right lane at exactly the speed limit. What the camera couldn't record was the decades of history, the scars from bullet wounds, and the weight of the gold badge sitting in the driver's back pocket. Trooper Kyle Vance had absolutely no idea that the man he was pulling over, a man he had already decided was a criminal, was Chief Deputy Marcus Thorne, the second in command of the neighboring county's sheriff's department and a 28-year veteran of law enforcement. Thorne wasn't just a cop. He was a cop's cop, the man who wrote the training manuals on de-escalation and constitutional stops. But right now he was just a black man in a classic muscle car. And that was all Trooper Vance needed to see to ruin his own life. Before we get into the details of this infuriating encounter, I need you to take a second. Look at that subscribe button. If you believe that a badge should stand for integrity and not intimidation, go ahead and click it. We are building a community here that demands accountability. And drop a comment below. Tell me your city and state. I want to know where the good people are watching from. This story is going to make your blood boil, but you need to see how it ends. Marcus Thorne was enjoying his Tuesday off. At 55 years old, days like this were rare. He had spent the last 6 months overseeing a massive task force targeting organized crime, sleeping in his office more often than his own bed. Today was for him. He had the windows down in the Chevelle, a car he had spent 5 years restoring with his own hands, bolt by bolt. He was wearing a plain white t-shirt and comfortable denim jeans, his badge and ID tucked away in his wallet. He wasn't on duty. He wasn't Chief Deputy Thorne today. He was just Marcus. He checked his speedometer, 65 and a 65. Perfect. He checked his mirrors. That's when he saw it. The aggressive grille of a Dodge Charger State Police Interceptor closing the distance rapidly. Thorne didn't panic. He had nothing to hide. He assumed the trooper was rushing to a call and prepared to change lanes to let him pass. But the Charger didn't pass. It settled in right behind his bumper, uncomfortably close. Tailgating. A classic pressure tactic. Thorne maintained his speed. He signaled a lane change to the left, thinking the officer wanted the right lane. The Charger mimicked the move. Thorne signaled right and moved back. The Charger followed. Then the lights came on. The piercing blue and red strobes reflected off the pristine chrome of the Chevelle's bumper. Thorne sighed a deep, heavy exhale of a man who knew exactly what this was, but prayed he was wrong. He engaged his turn signal, slowed down gradually, and pulled onto the wide shoulder of the highway, coming to a safe, controlled stop. He put the car in park, turned off the engine, and placed both hands on the top of the steering wheel at the 10 and 2 positions. Fingers spread, visible. He waited. Trooper Kyle Vance slammed his cruiser door shut. He adjusted his campaign hat low over his eyes. At 29 years old, Vance had been on the highway patrol for 4 years, and he had already developed a reputation, though not the kind you want. He was known as a stat hunter, an officer who prioritized ticket counts and drug busts over community safety. He walked toward the Chevelle with a swagger that masked his insecurity, his hand resting heavily on the grip of his service pistol. Not drawn, but threatening. The combat-ready stance. He approached the passenger side first, peering through the window, then circled around to the driver's side. He didn't see a threat. He saw a middle-aged black man in a t-shirt driving a car that was worth more than Vance made in 3 years. In Vance's mind, the math didn't add up, and when the math didn't add up for Trooper Vance, he assumed it was drug money. "Roll the window down," Vance barked, even though the window was already fully down. Thorne turned his head slowly. He didn't make sudden movements. He kept his hands glued to the steering wheel. "Good afternoon, Trooper. The window is down." Vance leaned in his face inches from the doorframe. "License and registration. Now." Thorne didn't move his hands. He knew the drill. If he reached for his wallet now, this jumpy kid might put 2 rounds in his chest and claim he saw a gun. "Trooper, my wallet is in my back right pocket. My registration is in the glove box. I am going to move my right hand to retrieve them." "Is that all right?" Vance sneered. "Just get the ID. Stop stalling." "I'm not stalling," Thorne said, his voice a calm baritone that had commanded briefing rooms full of SWAT officers. "I am informing you of my movements for your safety and mine. Before I do that, can you tell me the reason for the stop?" This was the question that always set officers like Vance off. They viewed a request for justification as a challenge to their authority. Vance stiffened. "I stopped you because I'm conducting a traffic investigation. Now give me the ID or I'm dragging you out of that car." "A traffic investigation requires a traffic violation," Thorne replied. His eyes locked on Vance's nameplate. "I was doing 65 in a 65. I signaled all lane changes. My tags are current. What is your reasonable suspicion?" "You drifted." Vance lied. "Failure to maintain lane. I saw you swerve." Thorne knew the dashcam behind them would prove that was a lie. He had been driving with the precision of a man who had trained pursuit drivers. "I didn't swerve, Trooper, but if that's your probable cause, I will provide my license." Thorne moved his hand slowly to his back pocket. He pulled out his wallet. He had a choice here. He could flip it open and flash the gold badge. He could end this right now by pulling rank. But Marcus Thorne was a man of principle. If this officer was treating a chief deputy this way, how was he treating the carpenter? The teacher, the college student, Thorne decided to let it play out. He needed to see how deep the rot went. He pulled out his driver's license, keeping the badge hidden in the flap, and handed the plastic card to Vance. Vance snatched it. "Marcus Thorne," he read aloud, mocking the name. "This your car, Marcus?" "It is." "Awful nice car for a guy like you. What do you do for a living that affords a $60,000 ride?" "I work for the county," Thorne said simply. "County. What, you a janitor? Garbage collector?" Vance laughed a short, cruel sound. "I smell marijuana coming from the vehicle." The parking lot, or in this case the highway shoulder, went silent. The traffic rushing by seemed to fade into the background. Thorne stared at the officer. The smell of marijuana was the oldest trick in the book. It was the phantom key that unlocked the Fourth Amendment, giving officers a pretext to search anything they wanted. But the Chevelle was an open-top convertible with the roof down, doing 65 miles per hour, and Thorne hadn't smoked a day in his life. "That is a fabrication," Thorne said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming colder. "There is no odor of marijuana. You are manufacturing probable cause." "Step out of the vehicle," Vance ordered, stepping back and unbuttoning the retention strap on his holster. "For what purpose?" "Pennsylvania versus Mims." Vance recited likely the only case law he knew. "I can order a driver out of the vehicle during a lawful traffic stop. Get out. I'm searching the car." "You have no right to search this vehicle," Thorne said, his hands back on the wheel. "Rodriguez versus United States establishes that you cannot extend a traffic stop beyond the time needed to address the traffic violation to conduct an unrelated investigation without new reasonable suspicion. You have my license. Write the ticket for the alleged lane violation and let me leave." Vance's face turned a blotchy red. He wasn't used to drivers quoting Supreme Court cases. He was used to fear. He was used to compliance. "I'm not asking you, boy. I'm telling you. Get out of the car, or you're going for a ride." "I am not refusing to exit," Thorne said, knowing that physically staying in the car could be construed as obstruction. "I am stepping out under duress, and I do not consent to any search." Thorne unlatched the door. Before he could push it open, Vance grabbed the handle and ripped it wide. He grabbed Thorne by the left wrist and yanked. Thorne was a big man, 6'2", 220 pounds of muscle, but he allowed himself to be pulled. To resist now would give Vance the excuse he was desperate for. Vance spun Thorne around and slammed him face first onto the hood of the pristine Chevelle. The heat from the engine radiated through the metal. "Stop resisting," Vance screamed for the benefit of the microphone on his chest. "I am not resisting," Thorne said clearly. "I am complying. You are using excessive force." "Shut up." Vance kicked Thorne's ankles apart, spreading his legs wide. He wrenched Thorne's arms behind his back, twisting the shoulders to a painful angle. The handcuffs came out. Click, click. The cold steel bit into Thorne's wrists. He was now handcuffed on the side of the highway, treated like a felon, all because he drove a nice car and knew his rights. "You're under arrest." Vance panted, adrenaline coursing through his veins. "For what charge?" Thorne asked, his cheek pressed against the hot paint of his car. "Disorderly conduct, obstruction, resisting arrest." Vance rattled off the contempt of cop special. "Trooper," Thorne said, and for the first time he let the command presence bleed into his voice. It wasn't the voice of a civilian anymore. It was the voice of a chief deputy. "You have just made a career-ending mistake. I suggest you call your supervisor immediately." "I don't need a supervisor to handle you," Vance spat. He grabbed Thorne by the handcuffs and hauled him upright. "I'm going to tow this drug mobile and put you in a cage." Have you ever seen an authority figure completely lose control because their ego was bruised? Type yes in the comments if you have. It's a dangerous thing, isn't it? Vance began the search incident to arrest. He shoved his hands into Thorne's pockets. He pulled out a set of house keys. He pulled out a folded handkerchief. Then he reached into the back pocket and pulled out the wallet again. "Let's see who you really are," Vance muttered. He flipped the wallet open, looking for credit cards or cash to seize. Instead, the sunlight hit the badge. It wasn't a silver deputy badge. It was a gold star with 5 points, heavy and intricate. The lettering was blue enamel. Chief Deputy Sheriff. Below it was the ID card Marcus Thorne. Rank Chief Deputy. Oath sworn, 1996. Vance froze. His brain tried to process the visual information, but it clashed violently with the narrative he had constructed. Drug dealers don't carry authentic gold chief deputy badges. Imposters don't carry IDs with holographic state seals that looked exactly like the one in Vance's own pocket, only higher rank. Vance looked at the badge. Then he looked at Thorne. Thorne was standing straight now, despite the cuffs. His eyes were hard, boring into Vance's soul. "Read it," Thorne commanded. It says, Chief Deputy," Vance stammered. His aggressive posture collapsed. His shoulders slumped. "That is correct. I am Chief Deputy Marcus Thorne. I am the second in command of the County Sheriff's Office. I outrank your station commander, and you are currently unlawfully detaining a superior officer." Vance swallowed hard. He looked back at his cruiser. The dashcam was recording. The bodycam was recording. He had just slammed a chief deputy onto the hood of a car, accused him of being a drug dealer, and arrested him for nothing. I didn't know," Vance said, his voice shrinking to a whisper. "Ignorance of the identity of the citizen does not excuse the violation of their rights," Thorne said. "If I were a carpenter, would this arrest be legal?" Vance didn't answer. "Unlock these cuffs. Now." Vance fumbled for his keys. His hands were shaking so badly he couldn't get the key into the slot. He dropped the keys on the asphalt. He had to kneel to pick them up. It was a pathetic sight. The arrogant predator reduced to a trembling, nervous wreck. "Leave them," a new voice boomed. Vance froze. He looked up. A black SUV had pulled up behind the cruiser silently. Blue lights were flashing in the grill. A tall man in a sheriff's uniform stepped out. It was Lieutenant Miller, one of Thorne's watch commanders, who had been on his way to work and recognized the Chevelle. He had seen the whole thing from the highway approach. "Step away from the chief deputy," Lieutenant Miller ordered, his hand resting on his belt. Vance backed away, hands up. "It's a misunderstanding, I thought." "I saw what you thought," Miller snapped. He walked over to Thorne. "You okay, Chief?" "I'm fine, Miller. Get these things off me." Miller unlocked the cuffs efficiently. Thorne rubbed his wrists. There were red marks where the metal had dug in. He turned to Vance, who was now standing by the guardrail looking like he wanted to vomit. "Trooper," Thorne said. "Get in your car. Sit in the passenger seat. Do not touch the radio. Do not touch your phone. Do not touch the dash cam. If you delete 1 second of footage, I will personally charge you with destruction of evidence." Within 20 minutes, the highway shoulder looked like a crime scene. 2 state police sergeants had arrived. A state police captain was on scene. The sheriff himself was on the phone with the colonel of the state police. Trooper Vance sat in his passenger seat watching his career dissolve through the windshield. The state police captain, a man named Henderson, who had known Thorne for 15 years, walked over. He looked sick. "Marcus, I don't even know what to say." "Don't say anything, Jim," Thorne said. He was leaning against his Chevelle, checking the paint for scratches. "Just make sure that video is pulled immediately. I want the raw file, no edits. You'll have it within the hour. We're taking him off the road right now, surrendering his badge and gun." "Good," Thorne said. "But Jim, this isn't just about today. That kid got way too comfortable way too fast. He's done this before." "We'll look into it," Henderson promised. "No," Thorne corrected him. "Internal Affairs will look into it. And I will be filing a formal complaint and a lawsuit, not for the money, but because if he did this to me, I need to know who else he's done it to." Thorne was right. The investigation that followed was explosive. The Internal Affairs Division of the State Police, under pressure from the Sheriff's Department and the media leaks that started surfacing within days, launched a deep-dive audit of Trooper Kyle Vance. They pulled 2 years of stop data. They watched 300 hours of dash cam footage. The pattern was undeniable. It was sickening. Vance targeted luxury vehicles driven by Black and Hispanic men. The stops were always the same. Failure to maintain lane. Following too closely. Vague traffic infractions that were hard to disprove without video. In 80% of those stops, Vance claimed to smell marijuana. In 90% of those searches, no drugs were found. But here's the kicker. Vance had a habit of confiscating cash. In 7 distinct cases, drivers had reported money missing after a search. Those complaints had been filed away by a previous supervisor who was friends with Vance's father. They had been dismissed as unfounded. Now, with the chief deputy of a major county as the victim, those files were reopened. The marijuana smell was the smoking gun. It was a lie he used like a skeleton key. Internal Affairs brought Vance in for questioning. He lawyered up immediately, but the video of the Thorne stop was played in the interrogation room. They paused it at the moment Vance screamed, "Shut up!" say, and kicked Thorne's legs. "Is this standard procedure for a compliant subject?" the IA investigator asked. Vance remained silent. They played the clip where Vance mocked the car. "What, you a janitor? Is this the level of respect the state police expects its officers to show to citizens?" Silence. The report from Internal Affairs was 200 pages long. It recommended immediate termination and referral to the district attorney for criminal charges. The state police colonel didn't hesitate. 6 weeks after the stop on E95, Kyle Vance was fired. But Thorne wasn't satisfied with just a firing. In many states, fired cops just move 2 towns over and get hired by a smaller department. It's called gypsy cops. Thorne pushed for decertification. He testified before the State Peace Officers Standards and Training Commission. He played the video. He showed the bruises on his wrists. If we allow individuals with this lack of judgment and this level of bias to carry a badge, Thorne told the commission, we are not just failing the public. We are endangering every good officer who tries to do this job the right way. The commission voted unanimously. Kyle Vance's certification was revoked. He could never work as a police officer in the state again. He was also placed on the National Decertification Index, effectively blacklisting him nationwide. The lawsuit Thorne filed was settled for $850,000. The state wanted to avoid a jury trial at all costs. The video was too damaging. A jury would have given Thorne millions just out of anger. Thorne took the $850,000 check. He didn't buy a new car. He didn't renovate his house. He started the Thorne Legal Defense Fund. He set up a non-profit designed to provide legal representation for citizens who had been victims of unlawful stops and searches but couldn't afford a lawyer. "I had a badge," Thorne said in a press conference announcing the fund. "I had rank. I knew the law, and I still ended up in handcuffs on the side of the road. Imagine what happens to the 19-year-old kid driving home from college who doesn't have those shields. This money is for them." Kyle Vance is currently working as a dispatcher for a trucking logistics company. He refuses to speak to the media. The supervisor who buried the previous complaints against him was demoted and forced into early retirement. The state police overhauled their training on pretextual stops. They banned the smell of marijuana as a sole justification for a vehicle search, without other corroborating evidence, a policy change that became known as the Thorne Rule. This story leaves us with a heavy question. Marcus Thorne survived this encounter and changed the system because he was one of them. He was part of the Brotherhood. But what if he wasn't? What if he was just a man in a t-shirt? The dashcam footage would have still existed, but would it have been viewed with the same urgency? Would the internal affairs investigation have been as thorough? We celebrate the justice in this story, but we must also mourn the reality that necessitated it. Justice shouldn't require a gold badge in your back pocket. It should be the default setting for every human being standing on American soil. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many Kyle Vances are out there right now patrolling the highways looking for a victim who can't fight back? And how many Marcus Thornes are there willing to stand their ground and say no more? If this story moved you, if it made you think about the nature of power and accountability, please share it. Send it to a friend. Post it on your timeline. Because the only way we fix this is by shining a light on it, one story at a time. Thanks for watching. Stay safe out there, know your rights, and never stop demanding the truth. See you in the next video.